Strange weather. Matthew 24 and Luke 21 speak of strange weather occurring in the last days. Can anyone deny that our weather today can only be described as supernaturally freakish? Even more frightening is that our weather seems to be becoming even more freakish with each passing month. Weather patterns are becoming increasingly erratic, and the ground under our feet is becoming extremely unstable. So precisely what in the world is going on here? Is this the beginning of a trend? Could it be possible that we are entering the worst period of natural disasters in world history? Giant sinkholes are appearing at an unprecedented rate. Earthquakes are becoming more frequent and more powerful. 6 of the 10 worst years for wildfires ever recorded in the United States have all come since the year 2000. And the western part of the U.S. is experiencing the worst stretch of drought since the days of the Great Depression. A worldwide weather phenomenon threatens the future of water and food supplies, as well as the global economy, experts say. Colombia, Pakistan, Somalia, Australia, Guatemala, China, and Kenya are just a few of the other countries suffering severe drought conditions. On May 20th, 2013, a giant F4 tornado devastated Moore, Oklahoma, and had winds of up to 200 miles per hour. It was estimated to be at least 2 miles wide at one point, and what made it especially destructive was the fact that it sat on the ground for 40 minutes. Most tornadoes only reach the ground for a couple of minutes. The tornado resulted in 24 deaths, and hundreds of others were seriously injured. It was far more powerful than the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, and it is being called the worst tornado, damage-wise, in the history of the world. The recent onslaught of hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and even tsunamis have many people around the world expressing fears that the Earth itself has reached a tipping point. Bizarre reports of weather extremes continue to come in from all over the world. As the northern hemisphere bakes in record-breaking heat, the southern half of the earth is suffering record-breaking cold. South Africa recently experienced one of the worst storms in recorded history, and extreme weather conditions with snow and ice in areas never seen before. Climate catastrophes, harvest failures, droughts, dust, and firestorms are raining misery on an increasingly unstable earth. Everything is changing around us. Even thousands of miles beneath our feet, the earth is rumbling loudly with a record number of volcanoes now in various stages of eruption. Floods, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, and other extreme weather conditions have left a trail of death and destruction, increasing in intensity and frequency, just like birth pains. These extreme weather events will become more numerous and deadly as atmospheric conditions across the planet become more and more unstable. The sheer force of nature is increasing, and she is deadly, often striking without warning. In the space of hours or even minutes, in the case of tornadoes, unbridled forces of nature can obliterate everything man has created. It's time to face the fact that the weather has changed dramatically in a very short period of time, and it's threatening to spin out of control. Changing seasons. It's not just extreme weather, but also changes in an area's basic climate that is concerning people. In many places, lengths of winter, summer, and rainy seasons have increased, while spring has decreased. Changes that are likely to have an adverse impact on food production. The Bible says in Daniel 2 verse 21, "He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding." The daily and nightly differences in temperatures worldwide are fast approaching yearly differences between summer and winter temperatures, which could wreak havoc on the global ecology by potentially affecting crops, insects, malaria transmission, and even confuse migration patterns of birds and mammals worldwide. Nature World News. Our freakish weather seems to be contributing to an alarmingly large number of forest fires all around the world. Trees that are many hundreds of years old are now gone. Australian firefighters recently battled the worst wildfires in 30 years. Wildfires in the western United States have been increasing in frequency and duration since the mid-1980s, occurring nearly 4 times more often, burning more than 6 times the land area, and lasting almost 5 times as long. Around the world, somewhere between 75 million and 820 million acres of land burn each year. Fires are increasingly damaging the world's forests, destroying millions of acres of valuable timber and other forest products every year. Mass animal deaths. Hosea 4 verses 1-3 tell us that in the last days the land will mourn because of man's sin, and that all who live in it will waste away. Hosea told us this will include the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and even the fish in the sea will die. Mass animal die-offs were first reported in the news on New Year's Eve 2010-2011 when approximately 5,000 red-winged blackbirds and starlings fell out of the sky in Beebe, Arkansas. In 2011, there were 138 reported cases of mass animal die-offs. In 2012, the number of mass animal deaths rose to 465 events that occurred in 67 countries around the world. During 2013, there were 798 reported mass animal death events that occurred in 93 countries. In 2014, there were 649 reported events of mass animal deaths that occurred in 76 countries. Famine. Matthew 24 verse 7 tells us that famines will be common in the last days. Currently, 1 out of every 6 people in the world does not get enough to eat. Aid agencies estimate that as much as 1/3 of the Earth's 6 billion people are victims of starvation. Every day, 34,000 people die from famine-related causes. A famine is a widespread scarcity of food caused by several factors, including crop failure, population unbalance, or government policies. This phenomenon is usually accompanied or followed by regional malnutrition, starvation, epidemic, and increased mortality. Nearly every continent in the world has experienced a period of famine throughout history. Some countries, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, continue to have extreme cases of famine. Global hunger now afflicts nearly 1 billion people worldwide. Severe acute malnutrition, however, is the more immediate killer. It threatens the lives of 34 million children. Every year, at least 1 million of them die from malnutrition-related causes. According to Science Daily, the world is less than 40 years away from a food shortage that will have serious implications for people and governments, according to a scientist. For the first time in human history, food production will be limited on a global scale by the availability of land, water, and energy, said a senior science advisor on food security. Food issues could become as politically destabilizing by 2050 as energy issues are today. The world's population will increase 30% to 9 billion people by mid-century. That would call for a 70% increase in food to meet the demand. There's a mounting world food shortage problem in many areas around the globe. The world economy is in such turmoil that this could easily cause a situation where world food shortages become a widespread global issue. There has been a dramatic increase in food prices around the globe for staple foods such as maize, lentils, flour, and oil. These basic foods are the substance that many families around the world live on from day to day. When the costs of these essential foods rise, it dramatically affects those relying on them. For example, what used to take a day's wage to buy may now take 3 weeks' wages to purchase. That places many families in dire circumstances. Pestilence, disease. The Bible tells us that in the last days, deadly diseases, or pestilence, will be rampant. Examples of current deadly diseases that are spreading include AIDS, Ebola, hantavirus, dengue, West Nile, SARS, bird flu, cholera, yellow fever, mad cow disease, Lyme disease, drug-resistant strains of many old diseases, and many more. Diseases we considered conquered, such as polio and the plague, are making a strong return. In sub-Saharan Africa, 23 million children are infected with the HIV. Ironically, just a few decades ago, scientists were forecasting that advances in medicine might soon eradicate deadly diseases. Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, Revelation 6, verse 8, Luke 21, verse 11. According to a recent study from Georgetown University, in the last several years, there has been unprecedented recognition of the enormous toll on global health, prosperity, and stability from the three major diseases in poverty: AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. Disease in all its forms is loathsome to every human being. It has brought untold suffering from millennia to billions of people, many of whom never saw it coming. Disease epidemics, rapid, widespread outbreaks among many thousands or millions of people, often strike suddenly. Before authorities can react, damage has been done. Such has been the case all through history. Of the 59 million people who die each year, approximately half, nearly 30 million, perish from sickness. The world loses the rough equivalent of one nation of Canada every year to disease, and it's about to get much worse. Disease will soon alter the course of history in a profound way. The coming disease pandemics will dwarf all who have previously occurred. Hundreds of millions will perish, and this will not only happen in poor, underdeveloped countries. Horrific epidemics, the likes of which have never been seen, will strike the world's wealthiest nations that will collapse under the impact. The ensuing chaos will affect you and all of your loved ones. Everything around you will change for the worse. Your life will be at risk. As new diseases emerge and older ones suddenly mutate, modern medicine has fallen far behind in the effort to eradicate them. Today, diseases thought long ago conquered are back with a vengeance. Tuberculosis, cholera, and other deadly scourges from the past have reemerged, this time much more resistant to standard treatments. This, coupled with poor sanitation, war, overcrowding, and poverty, is creating environments ripe for the massive spread of sickness. At the same time, the world has become very interconnected, more interconnected than at any other time in history. The advent of relatively cheap and fast air travel means that more people now travel abroad. More now also travel for vacations and business, increasing their chances of being infected by foreign viruses, or carrying one with them to others. According to noted Swedish pathologist Folke Henschen, infectious diseases have probably been the most dangerous enemies of mankind, much more so than war. The global threat posed by infectious diseases has never been greater. With the growing number of people using air travel comes the risk of a virus spreading around the world in just a few days. The recent Ebola virus outbreak has caused panic around the world, and it is still not completely contained. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa was first reported in March 2014 and has rapidly become the deadliest occurrence of the disease since the discovery in 1976. In fact, the current epidemic sweeping across the region has now killed more than all other known Ebola outbreaks combined. As of February 2015, 9,177 people had been reported as having died from the disease in 6 countries: Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, the U.S., and Mali. On top of ever-worsening disease epidemics, the world's resources, including clean air, water, and food, are also being stretched to the limit. Wars between desperate countries competing for scarce resources are increasing, both in scope and intensity. War leads to famine, which ultimately results in disease.